Just wait just a second while everyone's coming on. I see the numbers. Here we go. We actually started a minute early today, so we're going to give everyone a chance to kind of get on, which is good because we have a lot of information to cover and we want to take the entire hour to do it. So we're just going to give you a little bit more, few minutes, and then we'll get started. See what my clock says. All right, so let me go ahead and get started with some of these announcements. First of all, welcome to the Benco webinar. My name is Kay Huff, and I will be your host for this afternoon. We are super excited to have you on, and we really want you to participate. So, if you look down below, you're going to see a little thing called Q&A. As we're, going over the different topics that we're going to be talking about going paperless, we would love for you to ask us questions and we will take the time to answer those questions. However, if we don't get to all those questions, have no fear. The panelists are willing to answer the questions offline, and then everyone on tonight will get a copy of all the Q&A. So please make sure that you use the Q&A and help us in this webinar so that we can make it so you get involved. So with that being said, let's get started. So I am honored to introduce a great leader and my amazing boss who will be the mediator for tonight, Chuck Cohen.
Well, Kay, thank you very much. I'm hoping I'm going to be the moderator.
Moderator.
The mediator implies we're going to have breakout fights and arguments, and I don't think this group has that in it. So I'm hoping a moderator is the right role for me to play. And,
got it.
And with the four panelists we have tonight, I don't think I'll have to do much work at all because they have no shortage of things to say and issues to share. My job is just to make sure it doesn't get too far out of hand. So welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. We are glad you are here. The topic is timely and the panel is knowledgeable. So with that, I'd like to ask each of the panelists one at a time to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about how you got here, not here meaning how you got stuck in your house during a time of COVID-19, but here meaning what makes you a little bit of an expert on the topic we're going to discuss tonight, which is going paperless and how that's directly linked to our post-COVID-19 world. So ladies before gentlemen, Kelly, would you go first? Introduce yourself and talk a little bit of just for a sentence or two on what you bring to the party tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chuck. And thank you, Benco Dental, for hosting this amazing event. My name is Kelly Fox Galvani. I am partners with Dr. Stephen Katz, who's also on our panel tonight, in a coaching company called Smile Potential. And a big part of what we do in our world is help practices become more efficient, design better systems, and really learn how to work smarter, not harder. So we are big fans of the Chartless world before COVID, but now more than ever, we feel that if you're on the fence about it, we're going to give you great tips and tricks tonight on how you can have the train leave the station in your practice and finally become chartless.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. And Kay, why don't you go next?
Absolutely. My name is Kay Huff. I am the director of coaching for Benco Dental, and I actually started, I know I don't look this old, but I started in the 80s. And, we had the ledger cards, and I just thought that was the great. And I remember when computers came out, I thought, well, no one's ever going to want to use those. Like, that's crazy. And then, I don't know if you ever remember having a green appointment book and a red appointment book. One's for hygiene, one's for doctor, and someone would call for an appointment, and you have to go page by page by page. And then if someone used whiteout in your book, you would go, what? So with all that being said, I realized when computers came out that I needed to jump on board. And after we jumped on board and started using it, it was amazing how much time we saved. So with that being said, every time I go into coaching office and they go, oh, Chartless, no, I need my charts. It really gives me the knowledge to say, no, you can do it. Just take one day at a time, but it's worth it. So it's a time saver. So with that being said, I absolutely love doing it, and I would do it again if I needed to.
Fabulous. Thank you, Kay. We have the two dentists with us also. So first, Dr. Katz.
Hi, Chuck. Thanks, and thank you, Kay. As I am no longer a practicing dentist, but I began my career in 1982 as an oral surgeon. Then after performing a lot of extensive cancer surgery, decided to go back to doing something constructive and was a restorative dentist. I was an early adopter of computerization in my dental office, and I think that gave me a very early advantage in the growth of my practice. How I became coaching was I actually lost my practice to a series of life tragedies a little over 20 years ago. And the time that I was out gave me the opportunity, as many of the doctors have had over the last several months, to really redefine their systems and develop the strategies that would enable success. And then the success of my practice led me into speaking to other doctors about how to achieve that success in their practices. Probably the different take that I bring to tonight is not as much from an operational standpoint in going paperless, but from a business strategy standpoint. And that is that the computerization and going chartless in an office absolutely raises the value of a practice. And for those who were considering whether to go through the expense and go through the trouble of becoming chartless and going paperless at this point in time, I think it's a very, very important strategy for the future transition of a practice to be on the cutting edge and doing the things that are progressive.
Thank you very much, Dr. Katz. That's great. We're going to come back to those thoughts in a minute. Dr. Laskin, why don't you bring it? Why don't you go next?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Benco. It's an honor to be here. Honor to be partnering with Benco. Also, I really just want to say thank you to all the attendees. I know this is a very busy, challenging time, and taking time to come to a webinar like this is shows you're engaged. And I know I have a practice. I was just saying I'm in the same building as my practice where we have 7 dentists. I also I'm in Minneapolis. I also have the honor of serving as Chief Innovation Officer for Dental Care Alliance. So I oversee innovation across about 350 practices across the U.S. And I'm also Opera DDS and Opera VR. And we create a lot of solutions for dentistry to help move dentistry forward in a way that's very easy to implement. And I think that's the key piece right now. I think previous webinars when we were all shut down was a good time to gather knowledge. Now's not the time. Like, it's time to act. I think our patient's perception has fundamentally shifted during this time, and we don't have the luxury that we did 6 months ago to think about doing things. We really need to act, and we're all doing that in many ways. And so that's why thank you for being here, because I know it's a tough time to be here on a webinar like this.
Excellent. Well, we're glad all 4 of you are here. All 4 of you are here. So thank you very much. So for broad brush, just to keep ourselves organized, we have about an hour, a little less now because we started at 7. And I figured what we would do is we would spend the first part of the time together really talking about the why, right? Second part of the time really talking about the how, which would be along the lines of what Kelly talked about in terms of tips and tricks. And then we leave time at the end for a few questions, Q&A. I suspect that everyone on this call to a certain extent has gone paperless. And I want to start by asking the question, what does paperless mean? And does paperless mean no paper? Does paperless mean some paper? So perhaps before and I do want to come back to Dr. Katz's ideas around why paperless can add to the value of a practice. So can someone give us some ideas on paperless so we make sure that everyone sort of finds their way? I'm going to assume that paperless is like a journey, right? So you're at the beginning of it, you keep moving towards it, but it's one of those things that's maybe out there in the future. So Kay, why don't you start by talking a little bit about what does paperless mean and where are people in the journey?
That's a great question. So thank you for asking me because I get excited about talking about it. So it's really simple. You know, a lot of times when we go into offices, they say, yes, we're paperless. But however, they might be chartless, but they're not paperless. And so what I mean by that is that if you're paperless, you're really not using paper. You're really using technology to its fullest. And so what I find in offices is that they will have their forms on paper, and then they will take their forms and they will scan it on. And so with that being said, they consider themselves paperless, but they're really chartless, not paperless. So when you're paperless, you're really going to be having people check in. When they walk in, they're really going to just be signing in digitally and then actually signing in all their forms that they've already pre-filled out online and emailed to you, and it's set to go. And it saves so much time. So now that's a little bit of my view of that, if someone else wants to share their view.
Excellent. Anyone else have Kelly? Go ahead.
I agree. I feel that a big part of what Kay just described is also about practice image. There are so many other forms of healthcare now, like emergency walk-in clinics and things like that, that do all of their patient paperwork in this digital way. And it's impressive, even for myself as a patient, when I go to a place that can deliver that type of service, I find it very convenient. I find it impressive. It's very organized. I feel very safe in the way that I do that, communicating with those types of practices. So I think I agree with Kay. I think to be totally paperless is not only more efficient, but it also is a great first impression for your patients.
So as we go forward, and Brian, I'll come to you in a minute. I see you have something you want to say. As we go forward, I think what we should assume is what is Kay's definition and Kelly's definition are probably right. And I would assume that everyone on this call to a certain extent is chartless, right? I don't think anyone would be taking this webinar if they didn't have some sort of move towards a paperless office, but probably some of them, maybe most of them, are still using paper to a certain extent in their practice. Brian, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think paperless really is, it's a number of things, like you're saying, charts, it's forms, it's how you react with, how you communicate with people outside the office. I kind of piggybacking on what Kelly and Kay were saying. I like to talk today. The real aspiration is to be touchless, like removing touch points in dental practices. For example, with forms, you should be able to text people their forms to their own device so they can fill it out, so that then you don't have to manage wiping down like an iPad. That's a better experience. I just went to a organic food store and they had a pen, they had a cup out with a bunch of pens, and I'm like, where's the clean ones? Where's the dirty ones? You know? And so that's what patients are thinking today going to dental practice. If you hand them a clipboard, they're wondering who touched that. I don't think that's a stretch. And so, you know, being chartless is great. And there's, you know, I've been chartless for 19 years, but today handing a patient a clipboard with a piece of paper is the image that you're doing, just doing damage to your image every day. I believe that, I think that, you know, that's the feeling that I feel when I go to a restaurant. I would imagine people have a higher standard for dental practices.
So let's, as we assemble our reasons, our reasons to be paperless, right? To use the word that Kay used. So we've come across one, which is infection control, right? So there's this post-COVID-19 world. That's what Brian talked about. And we talked before, I think Kelly was alluding to the coolness factor, right? So when people want to go into a dental office, they want to go to a dental office where they present the idea that they're cutting edge, that they're cool, that it's as interesting to go there as it is to a Starbucks. You have a great experience. And then Steve, you were talking before about the value of the practice. I don't know if you—
Well, not just value, but in relation to what Brian and Kelly was saying, was it's a matter of trust. You know, Brian raised the issue of a restaurant. Well, you go into a restaurant that has, you know, fingerprints on the door and crumbs on the floor and lipstick on the glass, and all of a sudden your appetite for the finer things on the menu goes down. In dentistry, we're dealing with a cycle of trust with patients as well. And at a time post-COVID, where it is imperative to try to cut down the number of times you turn over rooms and inspire patients to have more comprehensive dentistry and fewer appointments, if they start to see things that lower their level of trust in us as a professional in this time, such as having 200 sticky notes all around the monitors at the administrative desk, and having forms that have crumbled up, you know, on the desk, well, all of a sudden now they're not going to be accepting the comprehensive dentistry either. They're going to wait a while to see whether they can develop a trust in a doctor. And you're certainly not going to impress the new patients. You're not going to impress the younger patients who are used to computerization and automation. So there's a lot to be said for the trust factor, more than just optics in going chartless.
So I like this idea about trust, and I'd like to parking lot that for a second and come back to it. Does everyone agree with the definition that Brian raised between, or the split between touchless and paperless? So before we talked about chartless versus paperless, does everyone agree with paperless versus touchless, and what Brian identified? All right, so that makes sense to me, and I like that. Just ballpark, what percentage of the practices in America do we think are truly touchless?
Well, 5%,
I would say 10%. What percent?
You know, Our research pre-COVID was about 15% that we're
Are
leveraging.
touchless.
Or, well, yeah, that's truly paperless. How many were actually texting the forms to patients were probably a lower percentage, so maybe 5 to 10%. Massive uptick. I can tell you right now, we've had to streamline all our onboarding processes because it went from a light heartburn to a heart attack during COVID-19, right? And so people are really influxing, and I think that's going to that influx. But has it gone from 10 to 15 or 15 to 22? Who knows? But I think there's a lot of work to do as an
Got it.
industry.
Yeah. Do we think that most dentists want to be touchless and just haven't figured it out yet? I mean, or do we think there's some active resistance out there to becoming touchless? Steve?
I'll jump in there.
Kelly, go ahead.
I'll jump
Kelly?
in there. I think that most doctors miss the mark sometimes when they invest so much effort, I mean, heart and soul, into clinical technology and into being able to have a digital workflow for their dentistry. And they're so committed to that. And it is a tremendous time and financial commitment. And then somehow the administrative technology sort of gets left in the dust and doesn't, again, back to that image and that trust, doesn't really reflect what a patient could expect in terms of technology. So I think that doctors often are aware that it's available, but I don't think they necessarily give it enough priority as they should.
Well, and of course, the irony is that, Kelly, every patient who enters the practice interfaces with the administrative staff, but not every patient who enters the practice interfaces with the technology and the clinical side. So,
Correct.
For example, I could invest in the most expensive, finest bells and whistles digital impression experience if I'm a doctor, and that may be used on 20 or 30% of the patients over the course of the year, but 100% of the patients interface with the administrative side of the practice, and that may be the portion of the practice that's not technology driven to the extent that maybe it could be or should be. I mean, I think that's what you're saying, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Steve, I was hoping you would chime in a little bit about the value of the practice that you talked about before. I think that's something that a lot of doctors don't think very much about. So can you talk a little bit about how an investment in this area of the practice would increase the value of the practice?
Absolutely. It's in looking at practices and value, you want to know that their systems are in order. You want to know that their processes are there. It's a reflection on the level of organization, the attentiveness to technology from an administrative end, to many on the outside, and picking up on what you said, will reflect on their patient's perception of the clinical prowess as well. And so if there's great technology from the administrative end, the assumption that the patients are going to make is that this practice is on its game and I can trust them from a clinical standpoint.
Sure. So there's that old, sorry, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
No, and then the value of practices is from a transition standpoint, that a younger doctor going in to purchase a practice wants to know that you can do analytics, that you can do analyses of demographics and unscheduled treatment and all the other things. If there's automation right from the registration standpoint that automatically populates the fields in the management software, then you're going to have a lot better data to present to a prospective buyer of a practice. And that would be the answer to a lot of the senior doctors, or as Kelly and I like to call them, the varsity
team,
who are now thinking about potential transitions and fed up with what's gone on through this COVID period, but not to sell themselves short on the selling advantage of having this technology in place for the younger doctor who wants to take over.
And if I may just piggyback on what Steve just said, for those doctors on the webinar tonight that are newer practice owners, they understand, and doctors that are nearing their exit strategy should understand the value of keeping team members on.
Oh, absolutely.
At least through the period of transition. And so if you have a team that is not well versed in technology at all, that sort of becomes a negative for a buyer, because now that buyer fears that that team may be unwilling or unable to seamlessly transition to a digital platform, a touchless or a contactless platform. And that would be another challenge for a new buyer to face that may make the selling doctor's practice a turnoff versus one that is further along in that process.
Oh, did that bring back a memory? In 1985 was when I introduced the first computer to my practice, and we had a senior member of the team who ran the front desk of my office, and I installed the computers, and I used to watch from behind the door, and there were times where she would spend sometimes 40 minutes just staring at the screen because she was so intimidated by the process. And
she missed her pegboard, Kay. That's what she missed.
I want to add one more thing.
Yeah, Kay, you were going to say something, then Brian. Go ahead,
I really do. So, this is it. If you aren't chartless and you are considering selling your practice, it is so important that you actually go chartless, because I really feel like there's so much value hidden in the charts that I don't know if you remember this, Chuck, but we used to go in and do a chart audit when we'd go to sell a practice. And we would have to go chart by chart by chart.
Count the B's. That was the rule.
You can only
Count
remember.
the B's.
So I do think that when you talk about value, when you talk about the practice, that to have a computer system and to make sure that you're using it correctly, that's another key, is using it correctly and using it to its fullest. You can actually be a lot more profitable in your practice. And when you go to sell it, I have a feeling you're probably going to get, and I'm sure Jim could give me a bigger number, but like you'll probably get like a 20 to 30% more value on it. And I'm kind of guessing at that, but I really feel that way.
In the old days, I know the management consultants used to say you got $1 million of treatment in those charts.
Absolutely.
Well, you probably have more than $2 million of treatment in the computers.
Yes. Brian, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I think we're in an unprecedented time of increasing costs and decreased labor. Like you can't find people. So the cost of hiring people, particularly good people, is skyrocketing. And I look at technology as like the most reliable employee. It doesn't ask for sick time. It can work at 4 a.m. And a lot of these tasks that you can automate, from recall to paperless forms and reviews, you're actually replacing time that a human would have to do. And it's the most laborious, mundane, soul-sucking work that pulls people away from engaging with patients. And so you're really doing your team a disservice and your patients a disservice. And all of that automation goes straight to your bottom line because you're not paying somebody else. You truly can hire less people and have people that are motivated to talk to people and have a human connection versus somebody who just wants to, process paperwork. No A player wants to be the person that's processing paperwork, right? And so I think that it goes directly to your bottom line, and then also you can increase the value of your team members that are there.
Yep. Okay.
So if you actually look at the time it takes to put a chart together, to pull a chart every time a patient calls, because we're supposed to be, writing in notes, and then actually to get patients to sign forms, paying for the forms, having patients sign it. If we just say that we had 3,000 patients and we were averaging 10 minutes per patient, okay? 10 minutes per patient, and we divide that out and we rounded it up to hours, you're probably looking at 500 hours per year you would save by going. And that's only in one segment. That's only looking at the entering process. And I'm only giving it 10 minutes for 3,000 patients, which comes out to about 500 hours a year that a doctor could save.
That's big. So what I'd like to talk about now, I'd like to segue a little bit into the how. I think we've talked about the why. Before we do that, I'll throw in one more why, which I think a lot of us tend to miss in the dental world. And that is that the world is going touchless, all right? So I think oftentimes in the world of dentistry, we think our only comparison is other dentists. I think our comparison is often the Starbucks experience or their banking experience, or pick a retailer. All of our patients are customers of other businesses. So when they see that they can go to Starbucks and order before they get there on an app and get there and just pick it up and have it be paid for already and never really touch anything, I think they start to wonder, why is it that in a place like Starbucks, I can have a touchless or a paperless experience, especially post-COVID, But in my dental practice, that as Brian said before, I expect to have a high level of infection control. Why is that experience so much different? So I would throw that out there too. So we identified the value of the practice, the value of the charts, the comparison to other businesses, the infection control. We identified a number of reasons why. Now let's talk about the how. So the first question I think everybody's going to ask is, wow, like, how do I do this? It seems so hard. So who can talk for a few minutes? Brian, I'll give you the floor first about how actually it's probably, here's the thing, it can't be any harder than cutting a crown. That's really hard, right? And getting the darn crown to fit in a 2 millimeter space. So it can't be any harder than that.
Yeah, I think it was Kelly that kind of spoke eloquently and kind of how dentists are very clinical in nature, myself included, and very much fact finders, and we don't even see the problems at the front desk that are going on, like you talked about. It's just like, well, they handle it up at the front desk. And I think that, ultimately, when it comes to issues like this, people fall into 3 categories. You can either ignore what's going on and try to bury your head in the sand. And I think, as you're saying, Chuck, like, if you get a better experience at your $15 haircut than you do at the dental practice, something is wrong, right? Or you can follow the market and see when other people do it. But the market right now is changing fast, that if you're looking to follow everybody else, you're likely going to fall into that dinosaur category, right? So I think the key right now is to act, and how you do that. What we've found, because we've had this massive adoption, it's really about educating your team members and making it easy. So, like, what we've kind of doing with in partnership with Benco is we're giving everybody 30 free days to try it risk-free, so you can get ongoing with Opera DDS. Try it out. There's 0 risk. You can cancel at any time. And then, very importantly, we have team training that we give every office for their team members. Because if you're here, you're all jazzed up, boy, I want to do this. But then you go back and you tell your team members, what often happens is the team members like, and then you have to transfer that message. We got, making it easy for your team to come on board. So I think we're doing what we can to help lower the bar. So all you really need to do is sign up and say, I want to get going. And Benco's awesome at walking people through it, and we can give you the tools to make it as humanly possible as we can. Particularly when it comes to paperless forms, that's really I think a good first step, because that's going to be the first thing when you have a new patient with intake forms and consent forms. That's got to be easy for them to do from home, I think, right now, and so I think that's the best first step.
Great.
I'm going to give you a philosophical how.
Wait, Steve, hold on a second.
Okay.
Kay, you next, and then Steve.
Really good. I want to say that because I do think that the first step, and Kelly, I'm sure you might be able to back me on this, is that they have to first clean up where they're at right now. I would say the majority of the software systems right now are a total mess. So if we went into them, you really can't trust them because they don't really have it correct, like whether their allergies are correct, or what's marked and what's been completed and what hasn't been completed. Normally when we go in and we actually start an office, it's going to take anywhere from a year to 18 months to actually accomplish it. But I do think having that checklist and that SOP to follow is very important. But I think the number one step is comparing what's in your charts right now to what's in your software, and then also making sure that your team members are able to use the software. I think there's a lot of softwares out there that are a little bit easier to use than others. I'm a little favored to Open Dental, and that Chuck, I always have been, because they're user friendly. So I definitely think that the first step is to make sure that you clean up your charts and make sure your charts and your computer system match. And as you're doing that, you can train your team on the areas they need to clean up.
Steve, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to give a philosophical how, but first, Brian, I just want to let you know that I'm hopping in my car and heading out your way tomorrow for a $15 haircut. Because here in New York, we can't get a $15 haircut.
Yeah, you have to be missing a bunch.
Yeah.
But the philosophical how is, and Brian will certainly agree with me, and Kay and Kelly as well, that doctors tend to be micromanagers, and that we think that we have to evaluate all these processes before we'll bring them into our office, when there's such an advantage. The only thing that we do in our offices that helps our office is putting our hands in people's mouths doing arts and crafts, or talking about it. And that, you know, we need to empower our teams, and that means giving them the resources, giving them the training, and giving them the trust to make the decisions on our behalf. If we've given them all the information and we give them the resources that they can research it adequately, they're the ones who are going to be using it, not us. So put those decisions in their hands, you know, and that's a big part of it.
So I'd like to, thank you, Steve. I'd like to go back to something that Kay said before, because it doesn't seem to jive with me with what Brian said before. So Kay, I heard you say this process could take 18 months. And I heard Brian say you can get paperless or touchless in 30 days. So could one of you explain to me, are those the same things or different things? As a listener, I was kind of confused by that. So Kay, why don't you go first? And then Brian, why don't you chime in? So Kay, when you say it'll take 18 months, what does that mean?
So you can't literally take every single chart you have and go through it. And so if you really want to become paperless, you're going to have to depend on your documentations that are in your charts. Normally, your patients should cycle through every 6 months. But if you happen to miss those patients, it may be out to a year. And then at the same time, you're still going to make sure, like, you really want to make sure you cross-reference it correctly before you actually take and put the charts away. So when we train an office, and this is not implementing anything new. This is taking the office where you are right now and making sure that you clean up your software. I will tell you, the ARs can be a mess. You know, the insurance can be a mess. That takes a little while. You can't do that in 6 days.
So you're saying, so what I hear you saying is you're talking about if the office needs to go chartless, that's how long it takes. But if an office is already chartless, as we talked about before, can you go paperless quickly?
Absolutely. It's all going to depend on the level of the team and where they are. And so if your office right now is not using charts, or even if they're scanning in and they've done their year and they go over to a new service, it will be a lot easier.
Got it. So Brian, could you talk about how long it takes to go from chartless to paperless and maybe paperless to touchless?
Yeah, so what I would say is that even if you're not chartless, you can go paperless with your forms. That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking of the patient experience right now. And it doesn't take 30 days, it takes 30 minutes. Like you can get going with paperless forms right away. What I was saying is we give you 30 days to try it for free. Is kind of so if you can't figure it out in 30 days, you know, if we can't, that's it. That, you know, versus chartless, which is, you know, switching charts is a bigger deal. I mean, like I said, I've been chartless for 19 years. Big fan. Open Dental is a great company. We work closely with them. I love it because they have, very developer friendly, also very, very similar to Opera DDS in that want to provide massive value, right? And so, which I think they do very well. But switching your charting system, that's a big task.
Right.
Frankly, getting rid of crappy paper, everybody's happy immediately. So I'm talking about forms. Kay was talking about going chartless. I think they're both very important, but going paperless with your forms should be a 30-minute process, not a 30-day.
That's a really good one. So Brian, let me follow up and ask you the question of which form, can I get any form I want to do the formless, or does the system come with specific kinds of forms?
Pretty much comes with every single form you need. Informed consent forms, intake forms. In response to COVID, within 8 hours of the first CDC pre-screening forms, we had that in everybody's accounts. We have, I think, 4 different versions of COVID pre-screening forms in everybody's accounts. We do virtual check-ins. So now that who would have thought that you can't have people sit in a reception area, right? But I think that's a very important thing where people can take a picture of their driver's license or their insurance card and send it in. Also teledentistry forms for triaging emergencies, for virtual consultations. Very powerful tools to be able to use. And then, of course, you can modify forms. And we have a very easy to use form builder. So if you really love your financial policy, right, you can build it in a few minutes. It's just by dragging and dropping fields. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Brian. And Kelly, you talked about this a little before. I want to come back to it, which is the tips and tricks for how does a practice go from where they are now to one step farther. Again, if we think of this as a continuum, right, to go from to chartless to paperless to touchless, talk a little bit, if you would, or share some ideas and wisdom from those practices who've already done it successfully.
So I tell, just to kind of piggyback on the first step, and I agree with Kay, we need to have better software training, even if we're somewhat chartless or we think we're chartless. I don't think we can ever stop training on our practice management software. So I echo what Kay said on that. And then to talk a little bit more about what Dr. Laskin said, I think that the first step to becoming touchless or paperless, whatever phrase you want to use, is to stop putting paper in the charts you have. Stop scanning paper, stop creating paper. That's, in my opinion, the first mindset change that practices need to have. And so I think that's the big myth from the practices that went chartless a lot of years ago, but still created a ton of paper, because they would take all of these paper forms, have people fill them out the old fashioned way on the gross clipboard with the, crooked ditto, really underwhelming for the patient experience. And then they would scan this stuff, and then they'd have massive shredding piles and all of this. So mindset change, stop making more paper. And Dr. Laskin described how to do that brilliantly by saying that every form that you have could become digital. And that also means your lab slips. That also means your specialty referral forms. That means everything that you have to look at all of the ways that we create paper in a practice and eliminate it.
Wow. How about prescription forms?
Same.
Wow, that's pretty significant, I would think.
Well, here in New York, we have been electronically prescribing now for about
Over
5 years.
Yeah,
Wow.
Mandated. We don't have paper prescriptions in New York anymore.
Wow. Is that true everywhere across the country, or just
A
in New York?
few states are mandated. Some have it. It's elective. You can sign up for it.
Got it. But everybody should, it seems to me.
Correct.
Makes
Correct.
it much safer. People can't steal prescription pads for opioids. And stuff.
Right. We had a big problem with that in New York, so they mandated it.
Got it. Good. Kay, how about, do you have anything you want to add to the tips and tricks that Kelly talked about? A good one, first off, stop making paper. We like that. Go ahead. Kay?
So that's great. And Kelly is right. Years ago when we were coaching offices to go paperless, we didn't have like what Opera DDS offers right now, to where we could start there and also do the cleanup in the back. So that's a huge difference. So that makes a win-win. And the only thing I would say, Chuck, too, is that when you're getting ready to go paperless and you're getting these computers in your office, I think offices really need to be careful about where they place the computers. I think that they really do need to get with someone, because I've gone into offices before and the computer systems are in the wrong place chairside. And it's not very user friendly. So I think, my biggest tip would say, make sure if you're only going to have one screen, that you can actually have the keyboard work for both sides. I think that's really important. And where it's mounted, and the technology that you use in your room design to make sure that your patient's vision is actually really good. All these things are part of technology and part of going chartless, but I think it's a big tip to make sure that you work with somebody to make sure that your design is correct.
It's the economical point of it as well. Back when digital impressioning came about, the thought was you would eliminate your biggest cost, which was impression materials, if you could start doing digital impressions. Well, think of how much offices spend on printing ink and paper and office supplies like that. There's no reason to give walkout statements now. That feeling that you need to give somebody a piece of paper as they walk out doesn't exist. And the amount of money that you'll save by using much lesser expensive technology than digital impressioning to save a lot of money in the business end of the practice will add up to a big advantage.
Got it. So as we think about going touchless and paperless and chartless, is there a terminal or a screen that the office should have in the reception area and or in the business area? Is that an iPad? What does that look like? Does the patient just use their own app on their own phone, right?
Well, everything that we do at Opera DDS, we want it to be as easy as possible for everybody. And so it really works on any device. I do agree with Kay that placement is crucial, but we want it to be flexible. And so leveraging like our tools are, we have an Apple Watch application, iPhone, iPad, Android, but for the patient, we don't want to have patients have to download or applications or log into portals. So being able to text forms or email them directly to their device is really crucial. And then in the office, I love having, rule of thumb, dentists love phones and watches. Assistants love iPads, and hygienists want their keyboard and their screen. That's what I've seen overall. And what's great using like Opera DDS, you can take like an iPad with 3M command strips and put them anywhere in your practice. So very flexible and easy to use. So I think getting away from this traditional lockdown in one single place, like with a traditional tower PC and a monitor that's like ergonomically mounted, I think makes sense. Having it be more mobile and flexible is really kind of not where offices typically are today, but I think if I were designing a new office, that's how I would be looking to design it.
Got it. Good. Well, thank you. Other thoughts? Okay.
Of course, my mind's going crazy, but I will say this. I also think, right now, if you're not, Chartless or you're not Paperless, and we get shut down again and you've got phone calls, if you're at home, you can actually log in and pull up your patient's account and trust that the information is correct. However, if you're still pulling charts, you're not going to have that ability to be able to do that. Or if you're, there are offices out there, believe it or not, that are doing both. The doctor can't give it up. They're actually making their team members pull the charts and use the computer. And it's unbelievable, because I will tell you, mistakes happen. And that's another thing I was going to say when Kelly talked about scanning in. I've seen it where documentation has been scanned into the wrong paper's chart. So if you're an office out there that's scanning in, you need to really stop and think of a different way, because it's going to catch up with you.
Good. So,
and what about the accuracy?
Good, Steve.
Brian, you can probably address that. How many mistakes are made in false entry in that area, where now, since the patient is filling it out, it's unlikely there's going to be mistakes in how the names are spelled and their numbers, etc.
So at the risk of causing a little bit of a storm here, and we'll see what happens, I'll be a little controversial. I'd like to address two topics. They're the mirror image of each other, in my opinion. One is, if I'm a dental team member and I'd like to embark on a paperless or touchless future, and my doctor is not that enthusiastic, what can I say to move the ball down the field, to get the project started? So I'd like to start with Steve or Brian, because they come at it from the doctor's perspective, and then we'll ask the flip side of this question in a few minutes. So what are the magic words, the magic formulas that you would suggest team members say to their doctors who may be more on the dinosaur side of this conversation? Brian, why don't you go first?
I will tell you that
Steve, go ahead, you go first.
Having had a very highly technical office and adopting technologies as they came about, I was able to attract the best team members, because the ads that I would place would talk about how it was an incredible opportunity to learn how to advance within your career, how to advance in the field, have the ability to use the latest technology, work with some of the most sophisticated team members. And you start developing a culture of, being better than everybody else. Now we're at a time where everybody should be there. And those who are not are at a significant disadvantage in holding on to the more progressive team members.
Got it. Brian, you want to add something there?
Yeah, I think one of the issues that I see in the average dental practice is that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. That the person who's most resistance to change can be the barrier. And it's because nobody steps up as the champion. So I think really it is just somebody in the practice. It's as simple as being passionate about something. And I don't know any, dentistry is filled with very compassionate people who want to do the best for everybody and want to work as a team, but aren't very confrontational. So if somebody stands up and is like, this is what we're doing and I'm going to own it, if it's the dentist, if it's the assistant, if it's the person that sweeps the floor, it's probably going to happen, right? And so somebody just has to step up and be the champion of it, I think is really the most important thing. And then just just let everybody know that, like, I'm going to be leading this initiative, me, and I don't know any dentist in America or that wouldn't be wouldn't step up for that. And frankly, if the dentist doesn't step up at that point, right now is a good time to be switching offices to somebody that gets it. I mean,
Wow.
one of my favorite sayings is you can't change people, but you can change people, right?
Wow.
And
So,
if the doctors don't have the leadership ability to take on that role that you're talking about, Brian, I think between the four of us on the screen, there's a lot of leadership skills that can be taught.
so what I hear the two of you saying, and I'll give Kelly and Kay the chance to weigh in a few minutes, are two important factors, right? So if the scenario is I'm a team member and I really want to see us go forward with a project like this, and my doctor might be a little bit unenthusiastic, shall we say. I heard two thoughts. One from Stephen was, and I think I'll expand it a little bit, was if we want to be the employer of choice, and for that matter, the dentist of choice, for younger people who are more technology savvy, this is a project that we must take on. And what I heard from Brian, I'll restate in a few, similarly, but a little different than what he said, is I'm willing to stand up and do it. I'm the team member, I'm the office manager, I'm key in the practice, so like I have some sort of standing. I will do the work, I will take us to the finish line on this project. So doctor, all you need to do is give me the green light and I will move this project forward. I don't think it's a complicated one. It doesn't involve a total systems change. It doesn't involve a long RFP process. I'll do some investigation. I'll find the right system and I will quarterback this project all the way to the end. So those are really the two thoughts that I heard Steve and Brian express. Kay and or Kelly, anything you want to add to that? And we'll come back and talk about the other side of this in a minute or two. But Kay or Kelly, anything you want to add to those two thoughts as far as how to talk to maybe a recalcitrant doctor?
So you want me to go, Kelly? You want to go first? Or want me to go?
Go ahead, Kay. You go.
Okay.
So it would be, you know what? I would go with stats. Like I love figures. So just like I told you earlier about how long it takes to fill something out, I would look at the doctor and I would say, you know, I want to save you money and make you money. I want to do both of those things. And then I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it. And, you know, if you lay it out there and you put it in place, you're going to have better scheduling. You're going to have a better quality of patient care because they're going to know exactly what's going on. Your treatment plans are going to be correct. And overall, we're going to do it step by step. So, you know, I would just get so excited about it that I would just probably take it on small bits at a time. But I guarantee you, by the time we finish the stats and I started figuring out how much you're going to save per money, you could probably work with even one less employee. It would be eye-opening and you'd be ready to go.
Wow. Good. Thanks, Kay. And Kelly?
I agree with Kay. I mean, my figures, I've calculated this over time too. I think it's about one full-time employee per year in a practice that is not chartless.
Wow.
And, you know, Kay talked about the metrics of just the check-in process and the time and the money investment and, time of a team member investment. But if you then take that and expand it upon the clinical hours, I actually think it's about one full-time team member per year. So I agree with Kay, as I very often do. But I want to say from my point of view, taking off my coaching hat for a minute and putting my dental team member hat back on, you know, for me, it's always about vision and philosophy. And if I'm working in a practice that claims to be the most caring, the most patient-centric, the, you know, most sophisticated, the most progressive in terms of clinical skills, you know, I'm going to hold myself as the team member and my doctor to task on that. And I'm going to say, look, doctor, you know, we've got to do this if we intend to live up to our promise of being totally patient-centric. This is what serves our patients better. This creates a safer experience for us as team. This creates a safer experience for patients. This streamlines things. This certainly has a tremendous ROI, although it is a time and money investment. I think the ROI on being touchless, contactless, chartless, paperless, all of these things, the new version of this today, I think it's infinite, the ROI on this. And I would just say to doctors, you know, let's stay true to our vision. If we say we're the best, we need to act on being the best, and that's going to require some effort and some change.
All right. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So let's now flip the conversation around and we'll give Kay and Kelly the first dibs at this question, which is, okay, so I'm a doctor and I'm maybe younger. I don't want to be stereotypical, but in general, I'm younger. I'm more technology savvy, and I've decided this is a project that I want to embark on in our practice. Now I go to one of my team members, and maybe not even the person at the front desk, but maybe it's the person who's the key dental assistant or the key hygienist. Someone maybe who's been in the practice for a long time. I don't want to lose that person necessarily, but I do think it's time to make a change in the practice. So as a doctor who wants to make this change, what's the best sentences? What are the best words to use to get my team members on board with a project that they maybe are scared of or they think will be very difficult? So Kelly, why don't you go first? What's the right way to unlock that conversation?
Kind of similar to my last answer. And that is for your long-standing, dedicated dental team members that almost always authentically love their patients.
Mm-hmm.
We have to ask them the question: if you authentically love and care about these people, our beloved patients, don't we owe it to them to come outside of comfort zones and deliver the best standard of care possible, not only from a clinical standpoint, but also from a total patient experience standpoint?
Got it. Oh, good. I like that very much. Kay, anything to add there?
So I would definitely go back and I would make sure that the team member really knows my vision and where I'm headed. And you know what? Sometimes my vision and your vision may not be the same. And maybe, you want to bring them on, but I would never tell a doctor to not go forward with what they want to do to build their practice because a team member doesn't want them to. I would definitely encourage them to give it a try. And I would make sure that you provided them with excellent training. And I would make sure that because this happens a lot, when we get a new doctor that is now purchasing a practice where this team member has been with this practice for 20 plus years. Kelly, I know this happened to me several times. I'm sure it's happened to you and Steve. And then all of a sudden now we're having to go in there and this young doctor's gun ho and they can actually beat this doctor down, and you don't want that to happen. So I believe as a doctor, you really need to come in and you need to be clear about where you're headed, what you want to accomplish, and you want to be really clear about how your implementation plan of how it's going to work. I mean, and if the team member is not on board with you, I think you really have to go back and revisit, is that team member the right person for you?
Well, and I agree with Kay. I mean, ultimately, the doctor does have the power as the business owner, the practice owner, to fire, to take out someone from the practice who's not on board with the vision. I get that. I think what we want to try to find tonight is what are the words that we can say, because sometimes the simplest sentences can get us over a hump. Because I don't think anybody wants to embark on this project in a way that results in loyal team members not being there in the practice. But agree, at some point, if the visions don't align, then you have to make a change.
I'll just add one other little tip, if I may.
Sure.
And I think it's important for team members to understand if they are a little fearful of technology themselves, and maybe it's because they're older, maybe they just have an aversion to technology in their personal life. I think it's important for team members, doctors, everyone to understand that age, we hear very often from team members from practices that have been around for a long time, our patients are much older. They'll never figure this out, right? And that's wonderful that they've got patients that have been with them for decades and patients that are senior citizens. But what's important to know is that the world has changed. Outside of the four walls of our dental practice, life has gone on, technology has come, people have advanced. And I'll use my beloved mother-in-law as an example. She lives in Florida in a huge retirement community. And she has learned how to do telemedicine visits for herself. She has learned how to do Zoom meetings because she's the president of her section of her HOA community. And they've been doing their sessions via Zoom now for COVID. She's learning how to do Instacart. So she's 93. She'll be 94 in February.
Wow.
So please, doctors, team members that are on with us tonight, and when you go back and present this to your teams, let's recognize that even if you yourself are fearful of technology or you feel that it's not something that comes naturally to you, please do not assume by the age of your patients that they will not be able to enjoy the benefits of something like Opera.
Good vision. Good vision. Thank you.
Chuck,
Good words. Yeah, Steve?
A few minutes ago, you said that we have the power to fire those that don't get on board. The book that I wrote was called They Don't Teach Us That in Dental School. And if you look at those that go into dentistry, for the most part, more technical in nature, personality types tend towards the less assertive. And Kelly and I teach a concept called the leadership challenge. And that is coming up with the vision, as Kelly spoke about, but then learning how to get your team to buy into that vision And one of the ways you do that is by constantly exuding positive energy, acknowledgments, praise, encouragement, and giving as much positivity as possible. And when you fulfill that challenge, what happens is you don't end up firing anyone. They end up firing themselves out of peer pressure.
Of course. Thank you. That's good wisdom, absolute wisdom. Thank you, Steve. Brian,
Yeah, I agree with that.
Perspective.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with everybody saying when it comes to vision casting, and I believe that strongly if you're a leader in the practice, you should be the keeper and repeater of the vision. However, I think just pragmatically, oftentimes you might have a team member that's making $15 an hour and has a grandmother that's sick, and at that moment in time, they're not thinking about the vision, a 3-year plan that you've got. So really just whenever you bring on some change, there's always going to be some sort of learning a curve that even if it's better for everybody, really just looking at it, what's in it for them, and messaging it from that standpoint. You know, automating something to reduce stress, and you know, it's going to be very easy with the tools we're talking about today, and everybody has a different motivator, right? But ultimately, like Dr. Katz mentioned, in dentistry, our team members more than anything want to be appreciated, and so letting people know that you're implementing these tools to help them do the job they, you know, this is for them, right? And not I don't, you know, not bring it back to your bottom line or what's important to you, but really what's important to the team member, I think is key.
Yeah, and I would add to that, because certainly, you know, at Benco, we've done a lot of technology implementations, and really this is another version of a technology implementation. And really, oftentimes what makes the big difference is just making sure that people understand that we're going to support them as an organization. It's making sure that they understand it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay if this takes a little longer than we think. Don't worry. We are going to get you there. We're going to help you do that. This may not be something that's you want to bring a technology trainer in for, I don't think, but certainly there are resources available on the web. There's resources available on the phone. And just this idea of validating someone's concern. We understand, you know, I understand why this makes you afraid, and I'm here with you. And this is something that I really feel like we need to do. And I would really love you to get on board with it. And we will make sure that it's a successful outcome. Sometimes that's really all people need to hear. And, you know, we're a little, it's easy to fall into the stereotype of older people tend to be more technology averse. I don't know that that's true, but I do think sometimes that older people just have less experience with some of the technologies we're talking about, and that doesn't make them any better, worse, or more or less averse. It just means that they need more experience, and sometimes we have to be the ones as employers to provide that. So
every time I go in the Apple store, I see
Yeah.
more senior salespeople.
It's great, right? It's great. We're all coming along. And listen, I'm a big believer that the number one organization that we can learn from in the dental world is Starbucks, right? Because I think everyone to a certain extent has a Starbucks relationship. And if people are willing to order their macchiatos on their phone and go and pick them up, or the people who work at Starbucks know how to work in a touchless, paperless environment, certainly I would say that dental practices should be doing nothing less than that. So I think Starbucks is a really good universal organization in the United States that we can all look to and say, okay, how do we have an experience for our practice and our employees that's at least as good as what people experience at Starbucks, right? If Starbucks is doing it, there really is no reason why we can't do it in a dental setting. So anyway, well, we're almost at the end of our allotted time. I figured what we do as an end, it's already 7:58. It feels like it's only 10 or 15 minutes, and already it's almost an hour, is I would like to ask each one of our panelists to give us one or two very quick closing thoughts to sort of summarize where we are tonight. Kay, I'll let you go first, and we'll pass it along from there, and then we will call it an evening. So, Kay, closing thoughts?
So, you know, my ending thoughts are hopefully, you know, if you're not paperless or chartless, think about it, because again, you know, a lot of things can happen, and you can have a fire, you can lose everything. And, you know, it's very easy to protect your data if as long as it's backed up. So I would really encourage anyone who is still using charts to give us a call so that we can make sure we can help easily walk you through it step by step.
Thank you. Good. Kelly?
I would like to say that look at it as an opportunity. If the things that we discussed tonight sound like something that is interesting to you, but you're a little afraid of making the jump, look at the opportunities. Kay mentioned so many of them. If you're not completely chartless and you're still using paper to treatment plan, you have such a great opportunity to discover all of the unscheduled treatment in your practice and capitalize on that. You have an opportunity to create a more steadfast recall system and reactivation protocol. So yes, it will take some time to put these things in place, but the opportunity is great. And so try to look at the positive. If you're already chartless, but you want to become more touchless, this is such a wonderful marketing opportunity for your practice that you can share on social media and on your website and through other external marketing endeavors to let patients in your area know that you are at the cutting edge of technology for their safety, for your team's safety. And so there's just opportunities on top of opportunities. And I think that's really what we should focus on as you embark on this journey.
Terrific. Thank you, Kelly. Steve?
In the interest of optics, of looking progressive, of becoming more productive, of inspiring a progressive team, I'd like to just pick up on the title of a program that we did about a month and a half ago, that the thought should be, paper is the enemy. And right now, one of our missions in our offices should be and must be to eliminate paper.
Got it. Thank you. And Brian?
Well, I think I started off the webinar with my opening. This isn't really a time to gather information. It's a time to act on this. And we kind of glanced over it a little bit. The importance of having a COVID pre-screening form so you can send a message to a patient when they're at home. I can't tell you the number of dentists that's reached out to me and said that a patient that was positive for COVID was planning to come into the office, but that COVID pre-screening form kept them at home. We know that they shouldn't come in. Patients don't know. We're doing everything we can to make it as easy for you to sign up. It's 100% risk-free for 30 days. Go to operadds.com/Benco. We'll train your team. But this is vitally important. We could be talking about many, many things today, from reviews and intra-office communication, lots of things. But I firmly believe that paperless forms right now are not an option. We should get on top of it. And I think that's really, really pre-screening forms and having people fill out their information before they come in is vitally crucial today. So yeah, thank you very much. Then thanks again for everybody that came on the call.
So thank you very much to Dr. Katz, Dr. Laskin, Kelly, and I'll turn things over to Kay to bring it home tonight. Thank you very much for being here this evening, and thank you for allowing me to moderate what has been an excellent conversation. Okay.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Chuck. You always do such a good job. We knew you would keep us going. We said that when we started, so we were talking about you before we came on. So again, thank you to the three panelists. You did an amazing job, and I love knowing that if anybody out there has any questions, they'll be able to reach you. We'll definitely make sure we send out your information, do a Q&A. Anyone that was on tonight will get some information on all three of the panelists that are on. So with that being said, I would like to tell you a little bit about the upcoming webinars. So really quickly, if you will scan this QR code, it will give you a list of everything that we have scheduled coming, whether it be webinars or workshops. All you have to do is take your cell phone and scan the QR code, and it will keep you updated on where we are and what we have coming up next. And I definitely want to tell you on the next slide, we are trying to stay on top of things for you and bring you good information to make sure that you can run your offices safely and correctly and have all the information that you need. So we are going to be doing a special report on HR because there seems to be a lot of HR questions with schools going back in sessions or not going back in sessions, and what do we do? Team members that can't work. So Tim Twigg is going to be doing a special report for us on July the 30th from 1 to 2 Eastern time. Again, that's July the 30th from 1 to 2 Eastern time. That one is really already starting to fill up. If you're not registered, please do. And then we're going to have an exciting webinar on August the 5th, and it's going to be from 12:45 to 2, and it's going to be on CBD. A lot of things are out there, a lot of information out there. A lot of offices are starting to use this product. We have a pharmacist that's going to be coming on, and I heard that he is very entertaining and very fun to listen to. So please make sure you register for that one. That's going to be on August the 5th, again, from 12:45 to 2. And then Roy Shelburne is going to be doing a workshop. A workshop is a little different than a webinar. A workshop, you will actually get 4 hours of training. You'll also receive a workbook that you can actually go through and review back. He's also going to be going over and telling you like some of these claims that you're not getting paid, why you're not getting paid, how you can get paid, and also when you're working with PPOs, what's the best way to ask for increases. So this is going to be a fantastic workshop. It's 2 days. It's going to be August the 21st, August the 28th, and both sessions are going to be from 12 to 2, and you must attend both sessions. And then the last one for this afternoon is Catherine Eitel. She's going to be doing a great workshop on communication. I know Chuck kind of mentioned, how would you say this? This one line could save, you know, the relationship. Catherine is excellent at this. She's really a great communicator. She's mastered the skill, and it's really important for us to learn as a team how to communicate and also how we communicate with our patients. So this is going to be a workshop. It's going to be on September the 11th and September the 18th. And these are all on Fridays, and it's going to be the same time. They're both going to be 12 to 2 Eastern time. So please make sure you sign up for that one. And with that being said, I would like to thank everybody for coming on tonight. I really appreciated any feedback or any questions that you may have. Please make sure you email me at practicecoaching@benco.com. Again, and there's some things out there that you want us to make sure that we present. Please let us know, and we'll do our best to make it happen. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.